This is the Voice of Russia from London. I'm Tim Ecott, and you're listening to Telling It Like It Is with studio panellists Alexander Nekrassov and James Whale. Alexander Nekrassov, a former Russian government advisor, journalist, and the man behind the website stirringtroubleInternationally.com. And James Whale, can I describe you as a radio presenter, a veteran broadcaster? How do you like people to think of you?
Well, I really like people to think of me as a multimedia talent, I think, really. Yes, radio, television, online, in the street, talking to anybody who will stop and have a conversation.
Alexander, you've made your name appearing regularly on British TV as a former Kremlin advisor. Do you like that label?
I think it sounds exciting. Actually, my label is a former troubleshooter for the Kremlin because I did sort out certain things for the Kremlin.
I asked that question partly because since our last show, the long wait is over, and apparently the dinner tables of London are still awash with the most popular topic, according to a latest poll, saying that the subject of the royal baby and the naming of the royal baby have been the most popular thing that people in London want to talk about. His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, now has a name. After all the hype and media hysteria, we now know he's going to be called Prince George Alexander Louis Windsor. Alexander, let's hear your view. What did you make of the name? Not terribly surprising or startling or perhaps original.
Well, actually, I thought he would be called George because it was in the pipeline. I think his grandfather is George if he becomes king. So that sort of looks natural. But I worry for little George myself because I think he's surrounded by not the sort of people I would like to be surrounding the future queen. King, yes. And the reason being is that he's been whisked to the Middleton abode somewhere. And they're going to look after him for the next 6 months or something. And I don't know.
Well, presumably the Duchess of Cambridge will be involved in the looking after as well.
Well, she will be involved, but I think her mother is a strong woman. And she's going to impress little George a lot. And I don't really know whether it's a good thing.
It's a very good thing. If you don't know, Alexander, let me just tell you, it is a good thing.
Why
it's
is
a very
it a good
well.
thing?
It's a very good thing because it's bringing the monarchy back to the people. We're going to have a monarchy of the people. It's getting closer and closer, and Princess Diana was doing that, and this is carrying on the legacy
but
of
look how
Diana.
she ended up. Come on, I mean.
Let's not dwell on that.
Yes.
That was tragic and very sad, and we have moved on, and I think the monarchy is moving on in a very, very good way. I think it's a great thing for Britain. Wouldn't you like a monarchy in Russia?
Well, we'd love to have one, but we don't have a monarch. But the problem I
We
have
could share.
here
We
with
could-
your monarchy,
we could share.
The monarchy is that when you say it's going to be a people's monarchy, it doesn't work like this. You can't have a people's monarchy. Once you take away the mystique, the mystery, it becomes basically a political job.
What happens now is that people get the feeling they could become part of the family. Before, that was never possible for what we call a commoner to marry in to the royal household.
Well, it happened before in history. Come on.
Yeah, well, let's not go back. Listen,
Kings were marrying simple women and so on. So no. It's not the first time. It's not the first
You're
time.
suggesting she's simple.
I think she is, yes. But I think is that the way
I should point out she has got a degree from the University of St Andrews.
Well, I mean, look at David Cameron. He has a degree, so what? I mean, look.
Well, let's not confuse something that is good for the country, i.e. the monarchy, with David Cameron, please.
But honestly, I think that when you make the monarchy something ordinary, or as Prince William says, normal, he wants to be normal. Normal is not what the monarchy should be.
They can never be normal. We will never agree, but the monarchy is a good thing for Britain. It is, apart from being a very good PR tool for the country, apart from being very good for tourism, apart from all kinds of things, they bring a lot of money into the country. It's a safety valve for the politicians as well. Because if we didn't have a monarch, we'd have to have something like Cameron as president, and El Presidente would probably be costing us more.
Do you want me to disappoint you? You're already a republic. If you open a British passport, it says you can only be British if you're a citizen. So how come that you say you have a monarchy? You have to be a subject.
We're not citizens. There is no citizenship in this country.
No, it says on the passport.
Well, they're wrong.
It says in the passport. I can show you.
Tell him.
Well, I have to say, I'm afraid Alexander is right. I think a lot of British people like to say we're subjects of the Queen, but in the passport it does say citizen.
No, it does, but we aren't citizens. There is no Bill of Rights, and we are subjects of the Crown, officially.
But you see, I'm not saying the monarchy is bad. I'm saying the way it's developing is not a good way.
We'll agree to differ.
Okay.
Because it's getting too close to the people, Alexander, you believe?
No, it's because it's becoming normal, ordinary,
No,
because
it's not.
it's losing its mystery. And the way poor little George was taken out of hospital, so the dad jumps into the car with a bodyguard beside him, of course, and
That's not normal. We don't all do that.
no, I'm just saying to you that the way they came out and the way it was sort of done, it's not a royal way to do that, you know. It's
Well,
not the
no,
royal
I
way.
think it is, and I think what you have to consider is that this poor little lad, George, is now going to have, his life is all mapped out for him. It's not like you or me. We can go down the road and decide we want to do something else. He can't. Not
Okay,
without
Ken,
causing
come
an
on, look at-
enormous problem.
Look at Prince Harry.
Yeah,
Come on.
no, that's a
Prince
different
Harry
thing.
isn't directly in line, though, is he? I mean,
Well,
he's
he
got his,
isn't.
well, he's
He's
in line,
fourth
but
in line.
he's in line, but he's got his brother there expected to take on the mantle of the monarch.
And this poor little lad
Still
is
a
probably
royal.
not going to become king, if he ever does become king, for what, 70 years?
I don't think you'll have a monarchy in 15 years. It will be just a puppet monarchy like in Belgium or Norway, where it's just, you know, tourist attraction.
Well, some people may say that's no different to now. I mean, they don't have any power.
Well, they
are
do
there as
actually a bit. They do. There is still a mechanism that can be used, but the Queen decided, no, I'm not going to do this.
She's also resisted all attempts to make her ride around London on a bicycle, like the Swedish.
Do you know
and
something? Well,
Belgian
quite
Queen.
right, too. She's an 86-year-old lady and works very hard and should be admired.
Because
I
she
did
uses
think-
homeopathy, by the way.
I-
That's why she looks so young.
All right, well,
I use
okay.
homeopathy as well. That's
doesn't
why I
work
look
on
so
you,
young.
obviously.
Well, it does, like occasionally.
I would like to see the monarch come out on the balcony during July and August, maybe 3 times a day, and wave to the assembled crowds.
I see.
Just a thought for encouraging tourism.
Well, perhaps if they're listening just down the road in Buckingham Palace, they
Exactly.
may take that idea on board, James, and it'll be yours.
Thank you. It's a bit like a franchise. If Russia or any other country would like to franchise part of the British royal family,
Well,
I think
franchise
there's
sounds like McDonald's, you know, so no. Franchise, no, bad word.
You mentioned hamburgers neatly. A lot of excitement in America this week because some high-minded people have been discussing the fate of the hamburger, or should I say the cheeseburger. One patty, one piece of cheese and some vegetables and a bun. Apparently, some quite important economists have been debating whether the hamburger is in fact the world's perfect foodstuff, the most nutritious, the most bountiful, and the best value food that any person on the planet could ever want or need. What do you think of that? Is the hamburger going to take over the world?
James, you eat them all the time. Come on, tell us.
No, I don't eat them very often, but when I do, I enjoy a good hamburger. I think there's nothing like a hamburger, but I don't eat them very often. But there are varying types of hamburger. There's the very cheap hamburger that I'm sure is not very good for you at all. And like everything else, I'm sure that you can find a very good balanced hamburger of good beef. Nice cheese, not too much cheese, not too good to have that with and make sure it's cooked and not too fatty. Got the salad on the side and a gherkin. I mean, how can it not be good for you?
Yeah, but that's not the best food. We're talking about somebody saying.
Yeah, but it's an American who's trying to make some kind of
Is he a
publicity for
shareholder
himself.
in some chain? or
Well, he's
something?
actually an economist, and what he's saying is that for poor people, there's a serious side to this, that for poor people, actually, they're often criticized for eating what's labeled junk food. But actually, if you talk about the calories per cent or per penny or per ruble, you can't get a more balanced, more nutritious meal than a hamburger, because if you try and buy healthy food for the same price, you're not filled up.
I think
Why
they
would
have
an
a-
economist say that?
Well, because it's
not the nutritionist.
Because he's interested in the price of food.
Oh, I see.
And perhaps what we should be thinking as a world is that food and fresh food and good food at the moment is becoming very, very expensive. If you've ever gone out, I don't suppose you ever buy vegetables, do you?
I do buy
Do you?
vegetables.
I thought
yes.
you only ate sort of raw meat and drank vodka. I thought that was about it as far as you're concerned. But I think it's a very good point, though. You can go into a fast food chain and you can buy a hamburger and chips and $1.20, $1.50, something like that. You cannot make a meal for your children for that price of good food, and maybe we need to think about that.
I don't think so. I advise people to stay away from them, honestly, or do it themselves. You know, you buy the meat yourself, you do the bun yourself.
But then
Economically,
you've got to spend the time, and you've got to cook it. And
But
you've
it's
got to
not
have
going to
the-
be more expensive if
It
you
is.
count. Well, not much more expensive. Come
You
on.
could not go out and buy. You could even do it. They do deals in some of these places. 95p for a burger. You cannot buy the meat and the bun and the vegetables, pay for the gas or the electricity to cook it for that amount of money. It's
I
impossible.
think it's very patronizing that you're saying that, because you say poor people.
I didn't say poor people.
Who
I
said
said
who
you
said
can-
poor people? Tim, you
blame
said
it
poor
on
I'm
Tim.
not sure I said poor
Yes,
people,
you
but
did.
Well, that
Yeah.
economist,
well,
that
perhaps I did.
economist,
The
that
economist. Let's blame the
that
economist.
economist
Yes,
said.
he said that if you're on a limited income, that's a total meal, and you can buy it in the high street for probably less than you could cook a healthy meal of the same
My
calories.
advice to people on a limited income: drink less alcohol. You know, that's the biggest waste of money from the
Don't
budget.
judge everybody like you judge yourself. for
I'm not
goodness
judging
sake.
everybody
Yes,
like
you
I
are.
judge myself. I'm just saying that's where they spend the money mostly.
Okay, one last point though on the food. You shouldn't eat the same thing every day. That's the problem. You know, you might have a hamburger once a week, maybe once a month, but you can't have it every day.
Yeah, but if this economist said it's the most
Fried chicken
nutritious,
the other days.
the most nutritious food, obviously people would think, okay, I'll eat it every day.
For the money, for the most nutritious food,
Oh,
for
okay.
the money,
All right.
for the money.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll move off hamburgers. This is the Voice of Russia. I'm Tim Ecott, and you're listening to Telling It Like It Is with studio panellists Alexander Nekrassov and James Whale. Slightly more seriously in the news this week, of course, a lot of hype and positive vibes coming out of the White House because of these peace talks between Israel and Palestine, or the Palestinian Territories representative. They're all looking very happy. They even broke Ramadan to eat together with Secretary of State John Kerry. Are we very hopeful that at last the Middle East, or should we say Israel and Palestine, are going to come to an agreement? James?
No. Sadly, we're not, because there seems to be some sticking point. I think it is about time this problem was solved. And since the world created the new Israel, if you like, at the end of the Second World War, and then nobody took into account the Palestinians and what they were going to do and where they were going to live. I think it is something we all in this world have to be chastened about. I mean, we've let a people, if you like, become completely displaced without anywhere to live. And we need to do something about it. We need to make sure that this is sorted out. And I'm sure that the Israelis, as well as everybody else in the world, want to sort it out. Why the Americans won't actually sort of be a little tougher about this, I don't know. Whether there can ever be peace in the Middle East, I don't know. I hope there can. I can't believe that the Israeli settlers are enjoying that life that they've created for themselves. I'm pretty sure nobody living in the Palestinian territories are having much fun. This is something the world should be very ashamed of. We've done something here that we haven't sorted out. It needs to be sorted out.
Should the world be ashamed, Alexander?
Well, I think that the Obama administration has done it all wrong again. First of all, they said that it will be done, the deal will be done in 9 months. You do not put timetables on such complicated peace talks. It's all very nice to have those meetings in the White House and in Washington, and everybody saying, yes, we understand, we have to do something about it. Until the Israelis will be building the new settlements, the Palestinians will not buy anything. Also, the Obama administration, although it looks at the moment as if they're keen on sorting out this mess, they're not really keen on sorting it, because they promised a plan. If I remember it correctly, when Obama became president, he went to Cairo.
Are you suggesting they like the Middle East being in this situation? Do you think they actually like the
I
tension in the
don't
Middle
think
East?
they like it to be in this situation, but there's nothing they can do about it. That's the point. And to
But there
come
must
out
be
now
something they can
and
do about
suddenly say, well, you know, that's it. 9 months and we're doing this deal. There's a question of, first of all, there's a lot of money that has been pumped into the Palestinian leadership, you know, to the Palestinian people from the international organization, IMF and so on. This money didn't really reach the intended targets. That's a major issue, by the way, which Tony Blair, the sainted one, was supposed to sort out.
Sainted one.
Well, he was sainted one in
Sainted
Britain.
one.
Come on.
Get out of
You
here,
called
the
him. You
sainted
called
one.
him sainted
You
one. Come on.
You mean Tony Blair, the one? If you ask people in the street here in this country what they thought of him, they would say stuff you couldn't broadcast. Now, look, he is the Middle East peace envoy. I haven't seen him anywhere near this initiative. In fact, I haven't seen him do anything since he became the Middle East peace
but he
envoy.
has a whole floor in a 5-star hotel in Jerusalem, and he's working hard there.
Or perhaps he's working behind the scenes.
Hang on. Alex must be a pal of his.
No, I'm not a pal.
Are you
of him.
sure?
No, I'm not a pal.
A serious point though. This is an embarrassment to this planet that we need to sort this out. When you see the pictures of what is happening in that area on both sides, nobody can be happy about it. and they all believe apparently in the same God. There must be surely some way they can bring themselves together with the help of the rest of the world, and if it means that the rest of the world have to be sort of a little tougher, then maybe we should do that.
Yeah, but the professional point of view and the academic point of view, and my point of view, is that it won't work.
Why won't it work if they say they want to work together?
They should not have had a schedule, a timetable, and a deadline. The deadlines never work because they will have to extend it, and the moment they start extending it, people will say, we knew it, it's going to fail, and it is going to fail.
I'll tell you what we should do. We should get some country, I don't know, Switzerland somewhere, and we should have the heads of all the main countries in the world, and Israel and the Palestinian representatives, whoever they may be at the time, in a room and not allow them out until they sort this problem.
And also, don't forget, the United Nations have failed miserably.
See, I'm trying to be optimistic, and every time I'm trying to be optimistic,
yes, but that's my job to be a pessimist. You see, and the United Nations, which is an international organization which is supposed to sort these sorts of problems, has failed miserably, and not just in Palestine and in Israel, everywhere else. Look at the Arab Spring. How hopeless they were. We need to have troubleshooters like I was a troubleshooter in the past.
Well, we might send you.
You send in the troubleshooters, and they just go in and sort out the mess.
I've got a name for you. This is going to solve the problems of the world, right, Tim?
A name?
Alexander?
Yes.
Cathy Ashton.
Cathy Ashton, yes. That's a good name, isn't it?
That is the name of the saviour of the planet, Cathy Ashton.
Yes, she showed us a thing or two recently.
Do you know who Cathy Ashton is?
Of course I do. She's Baroness, by the way, so mind your language. Cathy Ashton.
Well, she has another title. She has European Union High Representative.
Yes, for security and something else. A huge budget, by the way.
And if I was to go out into the street now and ask people who she was, nobody would have a clue.
Because you have to say Baroness Ashton. You
they
can't
wouldn't
say Cathy.
know.
You can't call her Baroness Cathy. Come on.
But where the UN has failed, she's now helping out.
Well, what I like about her visit to Egypt is that it was a no-nonsense visit. She came over, got into a helicopter, flew to some destination where she met President Morsi, who is no longer president, spoke with him, and then came back and said, he's okay, he's in good health, he watches the box a lot.
He's being fed properly. She did tell the world that.
Yes, he's being fed properly, he's healthy. And then she said, but I can't tell you anything else. Nothing. She met everybody. And then when she was asked, so what's your idea of how it's going to work? She mentioned deep democracy. I like this term, deep democracy. And but how on earth this so-called peace initiative is going to work? I think in my case, I would have suggested that the Egyptians should sort it out themselves.
Leave them to it.
Yeah,
they're not showing an awful lot of luck in
yes,
sorting it out themselves so far, are they?
Yes, but they just had that coup recently.
Peter, you're happy to call it a coup. There seems to be debate about whether it is a coup or not a coup.
Well, some people call it a coup, but if you ask the president, an elected president, how do you call this? Well, should be called a coup.
Well, of course it's a coup. The military have taken over, got rid of the elected head of state.
Yes, that general with a funny name,
yeah.
Sisi. Yes, he should change the name to look hard.
Well, we haven't been allowed to hear what former President Morsi actually calls it. He's not been put on the airwaves. We don't know if he's using the word coup himself, do we?
I think he probably said some pretty tough things to Cathy Ashton, especially as regards the new lot in power. And I'm not going to say what he probably said on air. But
do you think Western-style democracy can work in the Middle East?
Well, it's not working very well in Europe, so I don't know whether it can work in the Middle East. I think the Middle East, when you build a democracy in a country which never had a democracy, you do give them a bit of time to settle in, And here they just came in and said, okay, Hosni Mubarak is out, let's do this.
So what is democracy?
Well, democracy is when sensible people come to power and when a parliament actually reflects at least the opinions of some of the people.
So just remind me which country has this form of political leadership?
You mean democracy?
Yeah.
At the moment, no one. Because liberal democracy has collapsed. It doesn't work. And in a state like Egypt, you had to have a transitional period of, I don't know, 20, 30 years, when the new institutions of power would be created.
So what do you do when one person who gets elected, gets into power, then starts pushing some ideas that are not very popular with quite a large proportion of the rest of society? What do you do?
But they shouldn't have had those elections. They shouldn't have had President Morsi at all. They should have had some sort of... Muslim Brotherhood was the most organized political movement in the country, and that's how they took power, because they were organized, like the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks were the most organized force in 1917, and eventually they just took over. In a democratic situation, which was artificially created, you could not allow those groups, hardened groups, to get to power quickly. You had to have a balance. You had to introduce a certain, checks and balances. You had to even introduce, and Britain should listen to me now, yes, that you have to introduce an institute of independent MPs.
You're talking my language. I agree. Now, listen, this is something we agree on, because the problem with our democracy in this country is that most of our politicians are more interested in what the leader of their political party is saying than what the people who elected them. There are some good politicians who are interested in the electorate, but they don't actually get very far as their political life
you
is
have
concerned.
A two-party dictatorship in Britain. Come on. So
how do we get to that? If I wanted to stand as an independent politician, I would need either to have a sponsor who would put me into Parliament, give me the money to do it, or I would need to be independently wealthy. That's, of course, how democracy in Britain started many, many years ago. It's only very wealthy people who didn't have to work.
That's how it started in Greece, by the way. They were all wealthy. Yes.
So you both agree then that Britain is one of those countries still experimenting with democracy?
I think the world is experimenting with democracy, Tim, because I don't think we found the right way to make sure that people's wishes are taken account of by the people in power.
Plato, the godfather of democracy, said...
Plato.
Thank
you.
Plato. He said that every democracy ends in tyranny. You can read The Republic. That's what he says.
How close are we to that here in Britain at the moment,
I think
Alexander?
very close. I think that Europe is moving to this dictatorship of the EU because it's an unelected leadership. It's a USSR in a different form, okay? And that's where the problem is. Europe has to become independent from that EU.
I don't believe that at all for one moment. I think the European Union needs a big kick up its backside, and I think that is going to happen. There's a lot of anti-European feeling at the moment, and not just in Britain, in France and in Germany and various other countries as well. The European Union should never have expanded as much as it did and allowed countries whose economic situation was not as good as the main countries in Europe. But listen, what I am concerned about is if we continue to argue within Europe the way we are, if people continue to want to have all this independence and nationalism again, we are looking down the barrel of another world war. We're looking down the barrel of another European war. At the moment, the people of Europe have been getting on very, very well. They move around, they work in different countries.
Oh, sure. Now they're installing the borders back. Come on.
But that's exactly what's happening. That's what I'm saying. We need to regain a kind of democratic we need to get a democratic model that works, because if we allow this European idea, which I think was a great idea when it started, fabulous idea.
It was a trade union.
Yeah,
it was a union for trade and economy.
It was, but
they turned it into a political union.
But before that, the idea of the European Union was to try and get rid of nationalism and stop war in Europe, which by and large
yes, and now Germany runs everything. Come on.
I don't think that's right for a start.
It does
but
run
we
everything.
need to be very careful about this. Everybody's saying let's get rid of the European Union. There will be a void there that I don't like the idea of.
To back up your earlier point, Alexander, you clearly think the Baroness Ashton is not the person or the institution that should be telling the Egyptians how to sort out their own political process.
It was a bizarre, very bizarre visit and a very bizarre peace initiative. And the only thing I picked up from that is that every hack was saying it's just because both sides in Egypt hate America so much that Europe decided to interfere.
I don't think Cathy Ashton's ever done anything before, has she? I mean, she's always been somebody...
There's always a time to start.
Well, yes, you're probably right. You're probably right. But I think the European Union has to be changed dramatically, but not removed. That's my thought.
All right. Okay.
Speaking of experiments in democracy, of course, this week we've had the prospect of Robert Mugabe, after more than 33 years in power, claiming that he will give up the post of president if he loses the elections. He's already claiming that he's won the elections. Over 6 million Zimbabweans apparently ready to exercise their democratic vote, but the Movement for Democracy, the party of Morgan Tsvangirai, already saying that he thinks the polls were rigged. Where do you stand on Zimbabwe, Alexander?
Well, first of all, Robert Mugabe said exactly the same thing in 2008. He said, if I lose, I'm going to step down. So this guy is consistent. That's important to understand. I think I've heard that he already said that he feels he's won that election again. The reason why he will win, I suspect, is because his security chiefs, the army, the police, and everybody else, they think that if he goes, they go as well. By the way, if you say that he's an unelected leader, we have a coalition in Britain that is unelected as well, because no one voted in 2010 for a coalition between the Tories and the Lib Dems. Not a single soul.
Are you comparing David Cameron and Nick Clegg to Robert Mugabe?
Well, they're gentle dictatorship. They're gentle unelected regime.
All right, shall we talk sensibly about this now, rather than your sort of flights of fantasy about... Look, first of all, Britain had a responsibility to Zimbabwe, which we did not fulfill. For historical reasons, we won't go into it. When Mugabe started to treat white Zimbabweans, or Rhodesians, if you want to go back far enough, the way he did, or allowed these so-called old soldiers or something like that, I can't remember, but they went out and they did some appalling things. Now, this is a man who's 89, who has ruled that country for 33 years.
In robust health, by the way.
Well, for an 89-year-old, I have to admit, he's probably healthier than you and me. But he is not doing anything for that country. That country they used to describe Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, as the breadbasket of Africa. That used to produce the food that fed an enormous amount of Africa. Now people in Zimbabwe are going hungry. They're begging for food. And this has all been done by this man and his appalling government. And we, because of course it was a former part of our Commonwealth and everything else, we've just sat back. We're very keen to send our troops all over the world to do all kinds of things. And we've just ignored the people. Even when farmers were being dragged from their homesteads and beaten to death, we just ignored it.
Political correctness, basically, because they couldn't interfere. They would be accused, oh, you're imperialist. Well, by the way, that's what he was saying all the time.
But he's mad, but that's by the by. I mean, he's nuts.
He's managed to sort out the economy a bit, so, you know.
He sorted the economy out. He's sent them into absolute bankruptcy. You're not an advisor to his government as well, are you?
I'm not an advisor to his government.
Are you sure?
But I'm just telling you that in every regime like that, there are people behind the scenes who don't want him to go, the leader, to go.
I'm sure you're right.
And they they control the army, the police, and those comrades and so on. And that's why they just said, you're going to stay here till you die.
Why have we allowed him to behave in the way he has? And why have we done nothing? I don't understand it at all. I
have a sneaky feeling, because Zimbabwe doesn't have any oil. That's why the West is so indifferent to it.
You don't think that might be the reason,
because
do you?
Every time you have a country that has oil, you just go in, guys. You just go in and grab everything.
Are you sure there's no oil in Zimbabwe?
No, there's no oil in Zimbabwe. A bit of this and that. But if it had oil, you'd have Americans all over there. Oh, come on. They'll be all over the place.
Will we know that things are working again if Baroness Ashton books a ticket to Zimbabwe?
I think that Baroness Ashton can now become an international peacemaker.
Envoy.
Peacemaker.
Envoy.
And I think that when she comes in, there is hope. Like in Egypt now, there is hope now. I mean, deep democracy. It sounds very exciting.
Deep democracy.
Deep democracy.
Deep democracy.
Alexander Nekrassov and James Whale, thank you both for appearing on this week's edition of Telling It Like It Is. You're listening to The Voice of Russia from London. I'm Tim Ecott. Goodbye.